Hi, hello, good evening. We are still on the 12th of December 2025, and what I've now started to do in the kitchen, especially, is I have started to put masking tape around all the fixtures and fittings in the kitchen itself. Now, you're probably thinking, why am I doing that? That is really, really bizarre to do so. Well, there's a reason for this. And it's because I do not trust my landlord. Okay, anyone who says they trust their landlord is, in my opinion, is a very trusting fool, and I'm not going to be taken as one. Now, you can clearly see that there is paint on the actual plug sockets here and on the switch sockets, but that can easily be removed, and I will show you a little trick as to how to do that later. But the main reason I have put masking tape around each of the sockets is because as I step back from this wall, you can see how much discoloration there is on this wall alone. So if I put my flash on, that is the unit that my landlord put back on the wall that fell off. And you can clearly see that it's not level. There's no plastic film on there. It is just pure, plain MDF. And environmental health, that one of the last conversations I had with them was that this unit needed to be replaced before they could sign off my case with themselves, and that hasn't happened. So anyway, we moved down the wall. As you move down the wall, you can clearly see there is an obvious discoloration in the paint. And the reason there is a discoloration in the paint is because I have painted this wall during the 9 years I've lived here. Where the discoloration lies is actually where there was a unit. It wasn't my landlord's, it was my own, that I put in because in this area here there was no storage. It took me 9 years to realise that my dining table would actually fit there perfectly, and once I did that, my children, without arguments, would sit in the kitchen, make their own breakfast, and sit at the dining table and eat in the kitchen. But one of the main reasons I didn't permit them to do that, obviously, in the first 9 years of renting the property, was because the kitchen was unsafe. As you can clearly see, that I'm not going to put a table with my kids on underneath a unit that's likely to fall on top of their heads, like it did before. So if we move over a little bit, you can see clearly where the unit previously used to be. So there's the screw holes, there's the bare plaster, and that is this unit, and now it's been moved over to make way for this new fridge, which isn't new because it's covered in scratches, and as far as I know, my landlord's probably just got it out of a skip somewhere. So these visible marks that you can see where the plaster is, it's not because I haven't chose to paint the property in the last 9 years. It is because my landlord chose to rent out the property without basically finishing it off and painting the plaster or wallpapering it or anything. And then he's chosen to move the unit over himself, leaving these visible markings and drill holes and unpainted plaster on the wall. As we slowly move around the kitchen, again, that I will paint. This wall, however, I will not paint, and this is why I'm doing a video, for my own sanity, so that I can remember what I did and didn't do and the reasons as to why. Because I'm not the one who knocked a 4-inch hole in the wall. That was his so-called professional plumber that he had to come and service the boiler, and decided that the boiler wasn't fitted correctly. So he decided to knock a hole through the wall and use some real cheap and nasty cement and leave the wall looking like shite. Well, for health and safety, there is no way I would even consider or even contemplate trying to patch that up or cover it up, because I don't know how safe it is, and just putting paint over it isn't going to hide the fact that it's a total utter fuck up, in my opinion. And the whole boiler probably needs ripping out, even though it was only put in 2021, which, if I move forward, you can probably see from there. Sorry. Yeah, 2021, the 20th of the 4th, 2021, which means that in theory, my boiler should have been serviced every April. The fact that Environmental Health allowed it to slide for almost 3 years, because I've still not had written proof from them that my boiler was even serviced after April 2021. We are now in 2025. The boiler itself did not get serviced until September the 15th, 2025. I was then served my Section 21 on the 8th of October. So do the maths. I kick off, tell my landlord, my boiler needs servicing, stop fucking me around. And the boiler gets serviced on the 15th of September. He serves me a Section 21 on the 8th of October. So it is clear that, in my opinion, my landlord has wanted to get rid of me and has been vindictive to do so, but wasn't able to do so until, how ironic, the boiler got serviced. Well, if he was that desperate to get rid of me, why didn't you service it the 3 years prior when I kept asking you to do so in the first place? So there's the parts underneath, which again had to be refitted because I was actually told that the boiler had not been fitted correctly. The marks on the wall here are from where the old boiler used to be, and again, I'm sorry, I don't care what anyone says, I am not painting that wall, because no paint is going to go over whatever it is they've used to try and hide the massive great big gap that was in that wall and had been in that wall since 2021, and again did not get filled in until 2025. So that is my boiler. The ceiling has subsequently, I'm probably not even using the right word here, there is a visible sign of water damage on the ceiling. Again, I'm not going to try and brush over it and pretend it doesn't exist, because anyone who is potentially looking at buying this property in the future, if you're not told about issues with the property and they're not on the survey, or you find out there's actually something wrong with the property after you've purchased it that hasn't been disclosed to the previous owner, you can take legal action, apparently up to 6 years. Please don't quote me on that. Check terms and conditions of buying a house. But I am not going to do my landlord the satisfaction of painting over the water damage in the kitchen that has been caused due to their negligence. Again, this is because it's a flat roof and my landlord has decided to ignore the fact that over the last 9 years, water has been seeping in under the roof, through the gaps that were around this window and were around this window until this year, until 2025. So from 2016 when I moved in till 2025, this window was poorly fitted and inadequately fitted, which has caused extensive water damage internally, not to mention all these cracks that are structural, that looks like to me he's done what I call the toothpaste trick. And again, I am not going to paint over those because I think it's imperative that something as severe as structural damage to a property that is now clearly can be seen internally needs to be listed when the property either goes back on the rental market, which is what I believe my landlord will do, or is going to be sold. Because straight away, as a buyer, if I was buying this house, which I'm not going to, I'd be like, sorry mate, you're going to have to knock at least 30,000 off, because the first thing I've got to do when I buy the property is I've got to knock down the kitchen and rebuild it. And if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, I will show you the major stress crack when it isn't raining outside as to why, in my opinion, the whole of this kitchen, which is the main reason I rented the house in the first place, which is an extension to the rest of the house, is going to need knocking down and rebuilding, or just not being put back at all. But that is my opinion. I'm not a surveyor, I'm not a solicitor, I'm just a single mum with a disabled child who for 9 years has been renting this house, and I've been really lucky to have a tenancy agreement where my landlord, because they were just basically money grabbing, allowed me to rent it for 9 years. But the moment they got their energy performance certificate and were told that their boiler hadn't been plumbed in correctly, couldn't wait to get rid of me. So, yes, I still am very sceptical as to whether or not this boiler is even safe. And even when I asked Environmental Health whether it needed a second plumber to potentially come out just to make sure that it was, they did not want to know. All I can say is I do now have a carbon monoxide detector in the kitchen. I will show it you to prove it. But again, up until 2025, there never was one. Yes, you can buy your own, and I have done in the past, but it was one of the first things Environmental Health flagged up in this property, was that there was no visible signs of a carbon monoxide detector or smoke detectors in the property. Now, when I used to live on an